Hello and welcome to one and all. In today's class, we'll discuss about the next question which is asked frequently in the Unit 8 Foreign Sector. That is what are the differences between GATT and WTO. So this is also the frequently asked 5 marks question in the board exam. Okay. So as usual, before proceeding to the main answer, let me explain to you briefly what is the background of GATT and WTO. Okay. So actually what happened was, after the First and Second World Wars, most of the countries, they were devastated by wars. Okay. And because of the war and whatever the damage it caused, most of the countries were little bit apprehensive. They did not want to have any trade relations with the other countries because they are already disturbed by war. So, and because of this reason, due to this trade restrictions, the international trade was not prospering during that period of time. In fact, it was seriously affected and it was deteriorated during that period of time. But then the problem was, since most of the countries were affected by wars severely, it was not possible for them to develop their own respective countries economically without any assistance from the foreign countries. So all the allied powers, the allied countries, they all felt that international trade is necessary in order to boost or revive the economic conditions of their respective economies. Okay, so because of this, all the countries, they had a conference in Bretton Woods in 1944, and in that conference it was decided to establish three institutions. So those three institutions were, the first one was the International Monetary Fund, that is the IMF. The second one, the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, IBRD. So reconstruction, mainly to reconstruct all the economies which were affected or devastated by war, and also for to make the economies prosper, to develop the economy. So IBRD, popularly we all know that institution which goes by the name World Bank. Okay, and the third one, was the proposal to establish the International Trade Organization to monitor the trade relations between the different countries. Okay, so this was the conclusion after the Bretton Woods conference in 1944. But unfortunately, only the first two institutions were established, that is the International Monetary Fund as well as the IBRD or the World Bank. But then the third one was never came into force. International Trade Organization never materialized because of the differences of opinion on certain issues between the countries, especially the United States of America. So instead of, at the same time, the countries wanted to start the international trade immediately, because all those countries were suffering because of lack of international trade, and also, as I mentioned to you, because of the situation after the war. So they decided, till the ITO could be established, after resolving all the issues, till ITO could be established, it was decided by all the countries to set up some temporary arrangement, to temporary institute in the form of GATT, at least so that they can, some rules, basic rules should be formed, so that at least they can start the international trade between the countries. So under that intention, the GATT was formed. Okay, now the GATT, it was formed, the full form of GATT is General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade. So the name itself says it is the agreement between the countries on what should be the tariffs should be imposed. Tariff in the sense that the import and export duties. How much maximum import and export duties each and every country should impose, and trade. Okay, so it came into force on 1st of January 1948. The main purpose of GATT is to start and facilitate international trade between the countries by liberalizing or reducing the tariffs. Okay, so actually what was happening was, all the countries were restricting their trade. They're restricting their import and export. One is by means of charging high amount of tariffs, or in other words, high amount of import and export duties. That is one way of restricting the trade. And another way through which all the countries were restricting the international trade was by imposing quota restrictions. Only this much amount of quantity you should be imported from so and so countries. only this much amount of quantity should be exported from so and so countries. So that is the quota or the quantitative restrictions. So these were the two means by which all the countries were restricting the international trade. So the main purpose of GATT was to liberalize the international trade by liberalizing the tariffs, by reducing the tariffs, so that there will be free trade between all the countries. Okay. So the main special features of GATT is, one is it is supposed to be a temporary arrangement. It is supposed to be a temporary arrangement in the sense that GATT was originally formed only till the ITO International Trade Organization could materialize. So till that time it was a temporary, it was thought to have GATT as a temporary arrangement. And the second one is it is mainly related to tariff restrictions only on goods. So GATT did not consider itself, GATT was not related to services initially. When GATT was formed in 1948, it was thought to deal only with all the restrictions, all the issues related to export and import of goods between the countries. So this was the main purpose of establishing the GATT. Okay. Now the thing was, even though GATT was supposed to be a temporary institute, ITO never happened. ITO never came into force because of the differences of opinion could not be solved between the member countries on certain issues. So ITO never materialized. So GATT continued its operations. More or less it became permanent. Of course, it never became a permanent institute. So beyond the stipulated time period, GATT was continuing its operations. So GATT was continuing its operations till the World Trade Organization could be formed on 1st of January 1995. So after the formation of World Trade Organization, GATT ceased to exist. So after that, GATT was no longer in force after the World Trade Organization was established, as WTO replaced GATT. Okay. Now, regarding the rounds of GATT, when GATT was in existence, it had certain rounds of discussions between the member countries. Okay. So totally it had around 8 rounds of discussions. So discussions in the sense, all the there should be certain settlements, there should be certain negotiations should be happening between the member countries, so that trade can flow smoothly between the countries. So the first 6 rounds were related to only on tariff restrictions. In other words, how much amount of tariff each and maximum amount of tariff, maximum amount of import and export duties, how much each and every country should impose. That was the first, the issue was related to only tariff restrictions on the first, during the first 6 rounds of GATT. And then for the first time, the 7th round was related to non-tariff barriers. That is, what should be done to deal with the quantitative restrictions imposed by the member countries. So that was the 7th round. But then the 8th round, so popularly known as the Uruguay round. So it was held in Punta del Este in Uruguay, which it included several new issues. So that is, it included issues relating to agriculture, it included issues relating to services for the first time, issues or the negotiations regarding export and import of services were taken into consideration. And then TRIPS, that is the trade related intellectual property rights, and TRIMS, that is the trade related investment measures. Like that, certain new issues were taken for discussions during the last and final round of GATT, that is the Uruguay round, that is the 8th round. So since there were so many issues were taken into consideration, all the member countries could not come to a final conclusion. Actually, Uruguay round, it was happening between 1986 to 1994. Originally, the Uruguay round was supposed to be concluded within 4 years. But then, since the member countries could not come to a unanimous agreement, proper conclusion, this Uruguay round extended to more than 8 years. So it was between 1986 to 1994. So even after that was also proper conclusion, proper agreement could not be reached between the member countries. So then during that period of time, the then Director General of GATT, Mr. Arthur Dunkel, he proposed, he compiled a certain document which all the member countries agreed and signed. So with that signing of the document by all the member countries, GATT ceased to exist, and in its place, the World Trade Organization was formed on 1st January 1995. So all the member countries, they signed for the form, they agreed to start a new organization in the form of World Trade Organization. So this is all. The World Trade Organization was formed on 1st January 1995. Okay. So now regarding the World Trade Organization, it came into force on January 1st, 1995, and at that point of time, 104 member nations, all the member nations who were previously with GATT, they all became the members of World Trade Organization also, including India. India was also one of the founding members of the World Trade Organization. So its headquarters is situated in Geneva, Switzerland. Okay. So the World Trade Organization incorporated all the issues discussed under GATT. So whatever the discussions which were held under GATT, all those things were taken into consideration in World Trade Organization, including the last and final round of GATT, that is the Uruguay round of discussions. Okay. So all those new issues, agriculture, TRIPS, everything was included in the World Trade Organization. Okay. Now some of the special features of World Trade Organization is, World Trade Organization, unlike GATT, it is a permanent institution. Okay. So GATT was only a temporary arrangement, but World Trade Organization is a permanent institution. Second one, the member nations have to abide by all the WTO agreements, around 6 agreements, which were taken after detailed discussions or negotiations between them. So each and every issue was taken separately between the member countries. So after that was the reason different rounds were held under GATT. So even in the World Trade Organization also, once in 2 years, all the member countries will meet, and then they will come to an agreement on whatever the issues pertaining to the countries, pertaining to the international trade. Okay. So different issues were taken separately, and the rounds were discussions were held between the member countries, and then finally they will come to the conclusion. After that conclusion, the agreement will be made, and all the member countries, they have to sign the agreement. So approximately around 6 agreements were made under the WTO, and all the member countries, they are supposed to abide by, they are supposed to strictly follow all the 6 agreements unanimously taken under the World Trade Organization. Okay. And by chance, if there is any dispute between the member countries, if there is any differences of opinion between any 2 countries, or between any issues between different countries, there is a decision to be taken by the dispute settlement body under the World Trade Organization. World Trade Organization, it had a separate department known as the dispute settlement body. So this dispute settlement body will find a solution. It is like a court. What is the court is ruling, everybody should abide by it, isn't it? So this is like that only. So this decision will be taken by the dispute settlement body, and another feature is that this the decision has to be taken by this dispute settlement body within 18 months. Okay, within, that is the time limit given, and whatever the decision taken by the dispute settlement body, all the member countries, they have to accept it. They have to strictly follow. Whichever the country which are having the differences of opinion between any dispute between any 2 countries or the multiple countries, if they are having any differences of opinion, whatever the decision taken by the World Trade Organization, that has to be strictly followed by all the member countries. So this is the World Trade Organization. Okay. So now I think you have understood the background of, or the reason for establishing GATT, and also the reason for establishing the World Trade Organization. Now we will move to the main answer, differences between GATT and WTO. Okay. So this is the question. Analyze the differences between GATT and WTO. So introduction, GATT, the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, that is the full form of GATT, came into force on the 1st Jan 1948. Please try to remember the years. In order to, what is the reason? In order to regulate the tariffs among the countries participating in international trade. And whereas the World Trade Organization came into force from 1st Jan 1995, with how many countries? 104 member nations of GATT, including India, signing the agreement for the formation of WTO, which replaced GATT. Okay. Now the differences between GATT and WTO. First one, GATT, it has no institutional foundation. As I mentioned, it was only a temporary arrangement. Whereas the World Trade Organization, it is a permanent institution with its secretariat. Okay. Second one, under GATT, its commitments were devised on a provisional basis because it is a temporary. Whatever the agreements, whatever the commitments on the part of the member nations, it was based only on a provisional basis. Whereas under World Trade Organization, its commitments are full and permanent. Okay. And the third one, its rules were applied to merchandise only, that is goods. GATT was initially GATT was originally formed to regarding the issues related to international trade of goods only between the countries. So its rules, whatever the rules framed under GATT were related to only merchandise, that is only goods. But as far as the World Trade Organization is concerned, in addition to merchandise, its rules are applied to services also. Okay, so goods and services both are taken into consideration. And the fourth one, the agreement provisions were multilateral with selective in nature and were not binding by members. So this means that, say suppose if there are 5 or 6 agreements, okay, if there are 5 or 6 agreements were taken under the GATT and multilateral, that is all the countries are, more than 2 countries are involved in that, which are selective in nature, that is in the sense that, say a member nation can say that I can accept to only maybe first 4 agreements, the remaining 2 agreements is not suiting to me or my country, so I will not accept to the remaining 2 agreements. So they can pick up whichever the agreement is suiting to their economy, to their country, they can pick up and they can say that I will agree only to those agreements, the remaining agreements are not suiting to me. Selective in nature and were not binding by members. Even after agreeing also, they can deviate from that agreement. Okay, because GATT was only a temporary institution. But whereas under World Trade Organization, it is not like that. The agreement provisions are multilateral and binding on all members. So multilateral, all the countries and several issues they have to agree. And if there are 6 agreements that are taken under WTO, all the member countries, they have to agree to all the 6 agreements. They cannot say that only 2 agreements are suiting to my country, the remaining 4 agreements are not suiting. They cannot say like that. So if one agreement they are agreeing, all the 6 agreements they have to agree. Okay, so they have to agree to all the agreements taken by the World Trade Organization and is binding on members. The members are responsible to follow the agreement. Okay, that is under World Trade Organization. And the last one, the fifth difference is the dispute settlement was dilatory and not binding. So the dispute settlement was also not proper under GATT. And even though the dispute settlement was taken, the decision was taken under GATT, the members can follow the decision or they need not have to follow the decision. It was not that strict under GATT. But and also another feature under GATT is there is no time limit. It can take a long period of time to settle the dispute between the member countries under GATT. But whereas as WTO is concerned, the dispute settlement mechanism is faster. As I mentioned you, it is 18 months. Within 18 months, the dispute has to be settled, automatic and binding on the parties, the member nation, the contracting parties, the contradictory parties, they have to agree to the decision taken by the World Trade Organization. Okay, so now this is the difference between GATT and WTO. Hope you have understood. Hope the concept is clear. If you if you need any other topic regarding this to be explained, please mention it in the comment box. Okay, so if you like this video, if you find this video useful, please like, share and also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Okay, so until my next class, take care. Bye bye.